Welcome to today's episode of me reviewing highlights. The weeks are getting busier, fall's coming, and there are so many activities, but we have to maintain some sense of consistency in doing these videos, doing the reading. So yeah, that's me with another day of reviewing highlights, and we should just get straight to it because yeah, kind of limited on time today as well. So we'll start with the first one, which is from Accelerate. We compare the proportion of promoters, those who scored 9 or 10 in the high performing group. I'm thinking that they mean NPS, 9 or 10 NPS score. It's redundant NPS. In the high performing group against those in the low performing group. We found that employees in high performing teams were 2.2 times more likely to recommend the organization to a friend as a great place to work and 1.8 times more likely to recommend the team to a friend. So, what they're saying is that the the employees who consistently received higher scores, the higher NPS score and NPS again, and Net Promoter scores, they found that they were more likely to recommend to their recommend the organization to their friends. And this whole line of discussion in the book, around this topic and everywhere, in many other related material as well. For example, the book that I'm just about to read, about to complete, or I think I've completed it, Wrong Fit, Right Fit. Uh, all of it goes to show that to to enable an engaged employee, to build engagement in your team, all you need to do is improve the quality of work. You don't need fancy perks. Yeah, there needs to be a base level of sanity. They don't. It does not have to be. You cannot have absolutely what are the absolutely horrible conditions and then give great work and then expect everything will be fine. No, that doesn't work. There is some kind of it's kind of like a sanitation thing, basic sanitation things like proper compensation and everything that should be in place. But things like fancy offices and foosball tables and freezers and refrigerators filled with drinks and everything like that doesn't make a long term difference. What makes a long term difference is people who are high performing, great work, great team. That's what matters. The work getting done. This is another book that drives, especially at this point, is Drive. So it's a very very well researched topic, very well supported topic. That yeah, the thing that you need to focus on in your team is to just enable to get the right work done efficiently without any bottlenecks, without any unnecessary red tape or bureaucracies. Due process is there, but again, ask yourself, what process is essential and what is just because nobody is questioning it. Moving on to the earn life. I saw that the BPR. Uh, okay, so this is. I'm forgetting. I knew this BPR. Um, Maybe it'll come back to me. I saw that the BPR wasn't cold and bloodlessly technocratic. It was grounded in piercing understanding of people, as if Alan had internalized Drucker's ideas about the customer and employed the weekly BPR to business plan review. Weekly BPR treated his executive team not as his direct reports, but rather as stakeholders in one another's success. With each executive representing additional group of stakeholders, customers, suppliers, members of the community, etc. In doing so, it made everyone in the BPR accountable to both themselves and the group, meeting their dual need for internal validation and belonging to something greater than themselves. I think this is quite a packed passage over here. So the business plan review is a practice that was introduced at I'm forgetting the full name of the CEO, Alan someone, and I think he instituted this at Ford, if I'm not mistaken. That this essentially was a meeting with all the executives, with all the like kind of vice presidents or some level. They attend this meeting and they have 5 minutes to present the problems that they are facing. What's going, what like is it green, amber, or red, and just talk about it. And like there's a whole story of how BPR came into formation and like what struggles it faced in an organization like Ford and how did it transform. So that's one thing. So Yeah, it goes to show that this kind of like weekly meeting where everyone just speaks for 5 minutes might seem like bureaucratic and red tape. The red tape kind of the kind of red tape we just talked about. But it turns out that this is actually very very helpful. It transformed the company culture into one that started talking about failures as learnings rather than failures as shame. And there is a lot more over here, and you can see it from the passage itself. But yeah, I think I'll move on now. The leader's greatest return. Don't let your leaders sell themselves short or sell short the leaders they're developing. People usually rise to the level of expectations of a leader who believes in them. Show your leaders how much you believe in them and push them to invest their belief in those they are leading and developing. When it comes to belief, a rising tide lifts all boats. I think it's straightforward, but this reminds me of another saying I recently heard that when somebody asked, why did you go through all this work and everything? And they replied that because a friend believed in me and I didn't have the heart to let him down. So I don't remember where I read it. Must be in some other book. But yeah, it's straightforward. I don't know what else I can say. Belief is very very important. It's kind of I think times are changing. It's not really that kind of thing where it becomes a cliche or people frown upon it. It's not that kind of a thing anymore. But yeah, it's a good reminder that belief matters. Moving on, braving the wilderness. The brains of social species have evolved to respond to the feeling of being pushed to the social perimeter, being on the outside, by going into self preservation mode. When we feel isolated, disconnected, and lonely, we try to protect ourselves. In that mode, we want to connect, but our brain is attempting to override connection with self protection. That means less empathy, more defensiveness, more numbing, and less sleeping. Right. I think multiple takeaways over here. First of all, that the feeling of shrinking away into the background, that's really self-preservation. That's how we are configured to react when we see something, when we are being pushed to a social boundary. For example, by embarrassment or by any kind of disconnection, kind of shame or anything like that. When we are pushed towards the boundaries, we try to enter the self-preservation mode, and then in our mind, anything is justified, because we are the victim, and anything that we do is justified. So it's okay if we have less empathy. It's okay if we are being more defensive, more numbing, and this, I think, explains very clearly why that it links these two things, which may seem different, but it links these two things. So I think it's wonderful. Moving on, wrong fit, right fit. I just mentioned this book. In other words, inspirational buffers are natural motivators. From Todd Trash's great work on inspiration, we note that inspiration is not the lightning strike that we believe it is. It's actually a motivational process that moves from seeing a source of inspiration to being inspired and then taking action to transfer that inspiration to something new, different, better, or meaningful, or more meaningful. Right. So the author talks about different kinds of buffers. So this book is about wrong fit and right fit, right? Finding a fit in your organization, and there are two kinds of buffers that can. Sometimes there's nothing like a perfect right fit. The author does explain that. If the reading the title kind of gives you that impression that you're going to find your perfect right fit, no, that doesn't happen. But what happens is that there are buffers. There are places where the values at least fit, the way you work fits, but maybe the other things don't quite fit. So what would you look for then? So one of the things you would look for is inspirational buffers, and that's the author describing what these inspirational buffers are and how they help in somebody finding their place in an organization. So yeah, let's move on. Leaders greatest sorry, the leader's greatest return. As you develop leaders, you need to learn what motivates them and tap into that motivation. Focus first on what motivates them the most, but also inspire them in every area you can. Help them discover their purpose, give them as much autonomy as you can, build strong relationships with them, and help them to foster good relationships with others. Provide them with opportunities and resources to grow. Encourage and incentivize them to strive towards mastery of the skills, praise them, and reward them financially. This is from the section. It's kind of like a summary of various things the author has talked about, the things that you consider when you're developing leaders. And it's kind of like a summary. You can see that each sentence is a whole different point, and the author does talk about it in different chapters. Like at this point of time, author has already talked about them and about these things, and these are just a summary. So moving on. So good they can't ignore you. This is what you should experience in your own pursuit of good. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're probably stuck at an acceptable level. Again, it just says so. I think it's straightforward, but let me try to kind of like just one level deeper. That whatever you do, it's going to make you feel uncomfortable. Anything that you're doing that's worthwhile, it is going to make you feel uncomfortable. And if you're feeling very very comfortable in whatever you're doing, then you're not doing great work. That's what really it's talking. The author is talking about, and kind of reminds me of another thing that I have read, some other book again, that deliberate practice is opposite of being comfortable, or opposite of pleasant. Something I forget the last word over here. But yeah, the idea was that deliberate practice, that is something that is going to increase, that's going to cause growth in you, and that will never be a pleasant journey. It's going to be a painful journey. It's just reminding me of that. And I'm forgetting which book. It might be Getting Things Done. I don't know. I'm forgetting. Moving on to Kill It With Fire. I'm thinking that Kill It With Fire has pretty much come up every day. You know, I did take a lot of highlights in this book. It's a good book. It's important to understand that we advance in cycles, because that's the only way we learn how to avoid unnecessary rewrites and partial migrations. Changing technology should be about real value and trade-offs, not faulty assumptions that newer is by default more advanced. So we discussed this, I think, the last in my last video last week, where the technology is cyclic. That it's not like a linear growth. So it's not that anything newer is by default more advanced. It's not necessarily that. So this is going to it's showing, and I think we discussed this last week as well. Why is it important to understand this? And I think that this is the author's highlight, that that's the only way we learn how to avoid unnecessary rewrites. Because if you just operate from the assumption that anything newer is by default, then you would just jump onto anything that's new, not understand the fundamental nature of technology, that it is cyclic, and maybe the thing that you're going to adopt is actually completely irrelevant, or it's completely opposite of what you're trying to achieve. So let's move on to cues. Want to show someone they matter that you're listening? Turning toward is tuning in. I think this is a repeat. But just as a reminder that this is again the book about cues. So if I'm talking to you, I'm facing you, and that shows that you matter. So if you want to show someone that they matter, turn all the way in. And in the previous time that we discussed this, it was there were like three levels. One is that you're facing, like your body is facing in one place, but then you're tilting your head like I'm doing right now. If you see me, like I'm doing right now. But then the next phase would be to turn your torso towards them, and the last would be to turn your feet. You can't see my feet on the camera, but I'm actually twisting that. And I'm guessing that you would get some inspiration. If my feet are a little bit like this, but I'm still attempting to turn my torso, you'd still know that my feet are pointing somewhere else. And it just goes to show body language matters. It matters a lot in all of these things. So it's a very useful book, again, Cues. And let's move on. Remote, not distant. Patagonia has created a culture of collective feedback by training managers to ask for feedback rather than provide it. By modeling being a good receiver, they're encouraging others to ask for the gift of feedback too. So the author is pointing out that how do you how do you really go for improvement by giving feedback? No, that's being shown that there's more and more material that giving feedback is actually not that effective. So the author is making a point that what you do, it's to ask for feedback rather than provide it. So by modeling being a good receiver, encouraging others to ask for the gift of feedback too, because when they ask for feedback and when they receive feedback that way, that is when it actually becomes effective. When you are proactively giving feedback to somebody without being asked, it's not really that effective. It has been shown again and again, and I don't have. I mean, I'm not really going to dig into why, but there's a lot of discussion around this, that why giving feedback proactively, as in without any request, giving feedback proactively doesn't make a difference. It will probably not cause the impact that you desire. So how you would do it? You would ask for feedback, and that will show that will show that, okay, no, it's that we should also be asking for feedback. With that, I think that's the end of the highlights today, and it was a good day. I think, still 15-16 minutes now. And yeah, I don't know if again I'll have another episode this week, but who knows? I might. So until then, have a good day.